Aloha nerds, and welcome back to TheSalawag's Why It's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut, with less booby jiggle just for you. So, I just saw Prey last night. I really enjoyed it. For those who don't know, Prey is the sequel to the original Predator and Predator 2. Predator, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, about a commando squad sent into the jungle who almost get entirely annihilated by an alien hunter that hunts for sport. And Predator 2, which takes place in the urban jungle of LA in futuristic 1995, happens to feature Danny Glover as a detective in the middle of sort of wartime LA gangs versus cops on a whole nother level. And that Predator is essentially pursuing a lot of gangsters, and it appears to be part of the gang war, and is kind of influencing the gang war, but it's just the Predator hunting the greatest challenges he thinks he can face. And so, getting to Prey actually takes place 300 years in the past, in 1715. And it's starring Amber Midthunder, who is a Comanche. She's trying to become a Comanche warrior, but no one believes in her. And one of the best parts about this movie is that even if it didn't have the Predator attached to it, I really love watching Amber Midthunder's struggle to become a great warrior. And it really is a struggle for her. She has a lot of great qualities and a lot of great skill with various things she can do as a hunter, but up until the point of the beginning of the movie, she's not yet a respected hunter. And that's all she wants for the movie. And I really enjoy just watching that journey, which is coinciding with the Predator. The marketing says it's the Predator's first landing on Earth, and that's total BS, because if you watch Predator 2, Danny Glover goes into the spaceship of the Predator and discovers a T-Rex head. So, not the first time, marketing team, but thank you for lying to the audience to get them to watch this movie. But yeah, I gotta say, the beautiful photography, we get a lot of great photography of Amber Midthunder and sometimes other Comanche warriors walking with the great vista shots. It's very much like my ideal Instagram account as a movie. And yeah, I mean, just the fact that I had watched Uncharted prior to seeing Predator. And let me tell you, that movie is only a movie because it was shot and has actors in it. And technically dialogue is spoken. But that movie is full of so many tropes, so many been there, done that's. The fact that they used Tom Holland to play this guy, and no knock against Tom Holland, but Tom Holland looks nothing like the character. He does not have the quality. Not saying that he couldn't have performed it, but they clearly didn't care if he could. He's having a lot of tough lines that just sound hollow coming from him. He does not seem tough enough. He seems smart enough, but not tough enough for the role. And so a lot of these lines, and he's really being directed to be Spider-Man again. He's really just being like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hit you. Oh, but I'm also kind of a tough guy, and I'll hit you. But it's just like, I don't know. It's not really layers if you're just kind of being asked to be Spider-Man in one scene, and then you're Mr. Tough Guy in the next scene. But there's no actual room for the nuance of actual character development. And Marky Mark, I swear to God, he just looks like, well, I'm glad I'm being paid because nothing else is going on this fucking set. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like a genuine waste of time for both actors watching that movie. because it was just, and also watched The Lost City with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum, and again, it just felt like the plugins. You can see the producer studio thinking of, well, Sandra Bullock, awkward humor, Channing Tatum, awkward humor, put together, audience, number, and you've pre-sold the movie before it ever hit the theaters, so you already made your money. So essentially, the audience is just getting something that made money for the studio before you ever paid for a ticket, and no one's going to talk about it anyway because it's not a real movie. Both movies are pretending to be a national treasure movie, and also pretending to be a movie that should feature the actors that are in it. But I really felt like Channing Tatum not the problem, you know. Tom Holland not the problem. If both had been plucked out of those movies and casted for someone who fit the role better, the movie would have been better, but it still would have been an empty, hollow movie. And when I mean empty and hollow, I mean it's like when you watch a TV show and everyone's talking and they're moving the plot along, but you're like, well, but what's going on? And the what's going on that you feel on the inside is what's the story? What is this person going through? Why am I following them? Why should I care? What I love about instantly with Prey is that we're just straight into the beginning of, well, not really the beginning, but we're straight into the story of Amber Midthunder's. I forget her main character's name. I just love her because she's from Legion. I love the show Legion from FX, where she also plays a badass warrior with super strength. So seeing her in the trailer for this, I knew she was going to kick ass because she already kicked ass on that show. But just seeing it start and be a story about her and her journey and trying to be a great hunter, seeing montages of her trying to accomplish things. Just genuine. It's just the fundamental, basic storytelling stuff that doesn't require any caffeinated yapping or any tough guy lines, because there certainly is some of that, but it comes from the character. It comes from the characters talking to each other. It comes from the judgment of her fellow people in her community, going, "You can't do this. We've seen you try. You can't. You cannot do it." And it doesn't come off as like a feminist story. It really does seem like they're seeing her struggle, and just after so much time not feeling like she's up to the task that she wants to achieve. Now, we do not see other women hunters, but I do feel like it just is it's a genuine concern from the other characters, just feeling like they're not seeing her hit the progress points that she should be hitting. And so that's why they don't believe in her, as opposed to just being, "Oh, you're a woman, go cook." I mean, there is that tone, but at the same time, it is, when you see her struggle and fail, it makes her a better character, but it validates the concern of the other characters, that she is really struggling against her own fears and her own weaknesses, but she also knows she has certain strengths. And I think the movie does a great job of showing you what her strengths are and how she leans on them at first and then builds them up and makes her strengths better by facing the fears and concerns that she has within herself. And a lot of it is unspoken. And that's what I love. Again, one of the lines I hate in Uncharted is, "Aren't you too young to be a bartender? Aren't you too old for prom?" It's like, wow. Someone was paid to write those lines and then paid to act them and shoot them. Wow. Whereas in this movie, there's no lines at all, but you're seeing Amber Midthunder run through the frickin' tall grass from the predator, and someone pulls her down to the ground to hide. And then you see the predator tracking lines go onto the person who pulled her down. And just before that person gets shot, Amber pulls him out of the way. And that moment, it's a trailer moment, but it's also just one of those moments in the movie of pure tension, really working very well. And again, seeing this character's unique skill is that she sees what's going on. And I don't think the dialogue is perfect. I don't think it's a perfect movie. But I think it's pretty close to being a perfect movie. And I genuinely feel this is the best Predator movie since Predator 2. Some people don't like Predator 2. I don't know what crack they're on, but that's a special kind of drug I don't take. Predator 1 and 2 to me are fantastic. I think the first Predator, I talk about action through storytelling a lot, or I'm trying to. But Predator is one of those movies that has a lot of deeper meanings to it. And so, if you're just looking at Predator as another slasher film, I mean, those elements are there, but the Predator is a very distinct character with his own value system, his own method of operation. And I just feel like the best thing about what Prey does is it understands that. And that going back to the very first Predator, but with the very first Predator though, we're dealing with John McTiernan's directing, and he shot certain scenes for a certain reason. One of the things I do want to point out is in the first movie, that famous scene where Arnold and all the commandos mow down the entire forest and don't hit the Predator. Most people will see that scene and go, oh my god, the Predator's so good, he can just get out of the way, and that's what the scene's about. That's not what the scene is about. John McTiernan, both in interviews and the commentary, talks about the reason he did that scene was that was a commentary on the Vietnam War, where many people felt like all the American soldiers were doing was just mowing down the forest or people and not actually ever hitting a target, and that essentially their time and effort, however much skill they may have had, was ultimately wasted for a needless goal. And that was kind of his commentary on an entire war, on an entire generation of struggle. And we see some similar things coming out of the Iraq War, where a lot of movies are just blatantly talking about how it's about the capture of oil and the economic control of other countries for the benefit of ours. But certainly in the time of Vietnam, that's what John McTiernan experienced and what he wanted to say with that movie. So I think it's beautiful that we can kind of come full circle back to that first Predator, where we are back in the jungle again, where we are back in the woods, where we are sort of back to the basics of just looking at people and how we look at each other and how we kind of confront dangers that we're not totally certain of. I don't have any commentary or interviews from Dan Trachtenberg yet to say whether he was commenting on anything, but I did see a couple interviews where actually some of the actors and people on the crew were very happy the fact that the Native Americans, the brown people, were the main characters. And as a mixed person myself, I appreciate that. For me, Prey is in every way the Predator movie I've been waiting for. Not only that, but it connects back to Predator 2. I loved Predator 2. Danny Glover rocks that movie. And just that by itself, to me, is like, that's a Predator movie. The first Predator movie did have some people of color, but and I hate that term. F that term, okay? If you're a person, you're going to have, this is a color, it doesn't matter. F that term. But the fact that he was the main character in that second movie, and I thought he did a great job, then the filmmakers did a great job of sort of justifying how a city guy who was not a commando could still take on the Predator with his own grit and with his own way of approaching things. That, to me, was sort of the most interesting aspect of the movie. And Danny Glover, especially after the Lethal Weapon movies, it was cool seeing as the badass hero, as opposed to, Braveheart. So it was cool seeing him as the badass hero and how he did it, like how he survived the Predator by the skin of his teeth in the urban jungle was like the most fascinating part of that movie, and even the ending. So I'm gonna spoil the ending of Predator 2, and this is also a spoiler for Prey. So just don't watch the next 5 minutes of this video for a little spoiler, okay? So spoiler, I warned you. At the end of Predator 2, Danny Glover takes out the Predator by tracking him all the way to his own spaceship. And when he kills the predator in his own spaceship, other predators appear. And one of them, and it was clearly like an elder predator, tosses Danny Glover a gun. And it's a gun from like the 1700s. It's clearly like a powder-filled gun. And that same gun appears in Prey. So that gun gets picked up by Amber Midthunder's character. And I actually thought it was going to be more of a forewarning. I thought she was going to get killed. I thought I would still love this movie. If they ended it that way and she still died, I would have been impressed. But I like that she just picks it up. So it kind of suggests that this gun kind of has a lineage to the Predators, that perhaps in another movie, a Predator will come back for revenge and pick up that gun. In one form or another, that gun has a lineage, and I just appreciate that it gets tossed around in this movie. I didn't need it to be, because at the point in the story where we get Amber Midthunder to the end of the movie, I just want her to survive anyway. So I'm glad that, spoiler alert, she does not die. But that's the whole game of the Predator movie. Typically, if you've made it to the end, you're surviving. But hey, Dan Trachtenberg, when you make Prey 2, now you know how the ending's gotta be. That gun has to be taken by the Predator. So, spoiler alert for Prey 2, the main character has to lose. If you want to keep it interesting. Just to keep it interesting, that's what you gotta do. I would say, so for nitpicks for Prey, positives for Prey. So, end of spoilers. Positives for Prey. Do you want to watch this? Well, hey, if you've seen Predator movies, the great thing about this movie is it's kind of made for the fan of Predator. So in Predator 1 and 2, and typically in movies with Predator in it, you're not seeing Predator a lot. It's kind of almost the Steven Spielberg Jaws approach, where you don't see the Predator until a certain point. And this movie kind of does the opposite, because the Predator is invisible. But what's interesting about this movie is that you see the Predator land. You see the Predator kind of go through all the kills he needs to go through to build his way up to the human enemy, which is what I like a lot. Because first we see Predator kill a snake, and then he kills a larger animal, and then he fights a bear. And all of that builds up to him hunting the humans. And it's nice to see this is the Predator's logical growth, because you do see all those skulls on the first Predator's belt, that he's collecting all the skulls of all the animals he's killed. And there's sort of a sense of the arc that the Predator needs to accomplish his sporting kills in a certain order, in a building way, because that proves the Predator's sturdiness and the Predator's hunting prowess. But it's interesting seeing for someone who, if you've never seen Predator before, then you're the movie, I do think, does a slight disservice to your experience, because you do see the Predator so much that he does feel less threatening by the end of the movie. Whereas if you've seen the Predator movies before, you already know how threatening the Predator is. So it's more of just a fun examination of how the Predator operates, and getting to see the process, as opposed to the previous movies where the Predator is already ready for the human enemy, and you're just kind of haunted by how horrible the Predator's kills are. So I think there's a pro and a con to the approach of the movie. I would have shown the Predator just a little bit less, because being invisible doesn't really count as not showing him. But at the same time, I think, as someone who knows the Predator franchise and has seen all of the Predator movies, except for The Predator, which I could not get through 5 minutes of. I'm so sorry. Why did you do that? Anyway, but, and I didn't care for Predators. For those who like Predators, that was one of those movies that was halfway to Uncharted for me, where we have the characters all verbalizing their concerns and all verbalizing their it's so talky and so unnecessary with the dialogue that it kind of wastes the fun of being in a Predator movie in the first place. I just think it could have been a lot more interesting. Morpheus was the most interesting part of that movie, and he's only in it for 5 minutes. Um, and when it comes to AVP, I love the lore building for Predator. I think that movie suffers just from not being made by Ridley Scott. If that had been made by Ridley Scott, I think we would have had a much bigger, more epic movie, but also would have had just a little bit more time to be afraid of both Predator and Alien. I just think the movie kind of had that 2000s pop bang problem where it was just a little too much pop, but what we needed was the anticipation. And the best part of Predator movies when they're done right is that anticipation of not only the predators coming for you, but knowing that there's going to be a showdown versus Predator and whoever the main character is. And I'll say, so the pros and cons are a bit mixed. My biggest problem with the movie is two scenes. One is when Amber Midthunder kind of explains that the predator won't attack you if you're not armed. Not that scene is a problem. I just don't like the way it was done. I think it would have been much better if she had just said, "Stay still, don't move," and have the predator like walk past them, as opposed to it's kind of awkwardly in the middle of an action sequence. I just thought that's kind of hokey feeling. It doesn't quite. It's kind of taking the pressure off during a scene where the audience, who, even if you've been paying attention, for the newcomer should still be scared that the predator is going to go up and freaking cut them. Um, and the other scene is the finale. I do think it was a good ending. I don't think it was a bad ending. But I did feel it was just a little bit, it just felt slightly too easy compared to her journey building up to the ending. Just slightly. And I just mean just slightly, because I think the first two Predator movies do the best job of you truly feeling like there is no chance that the human can take on the Predator. And that the fact that the human won, it genuinely feels surprising and shocking. But I think Amber Midthunder, the ironic thing is this movie is about building up Amber Midthunder to the point where you believe she's confident in herself to handle the situation. And that is kind of essentially the main part of her character. But I would still say, again, for the newcomer and for the Predator fan, I do wish it just felt just slightly too easy. I don't want to spoil it for those who haven't seen the movie, because I think you should see this movie. I think you should absolutely see Prey. But I do feel like if they had just pushed the tension just a little bit more with her solution, if at least they made it seem like Predator, I mean, maybe they did, and I just, maybe the way it was cut or maybe the way I experienced it, I kind of missed it. If they just made it seem a little bit more like the Predator had the upper hand, as opposed to, I don't think the Predator would have fallen for that. Even this Predator, even this 300 years ago Predator, I don't think he would have fallen for it. Or at the very least, he should have felt like he wasn't falling for something. And I didn't feel like that came across. I think it came off to me as a little bit too easy, even though I do think it was brilliant. I think it was a brilliant way to get the Predator. I think it was very, like, of all the ways to get the Predator, I'm like, that's such a great way to do it, and it hasn't been done yet. It's kind of been done in shades across some of the other Predator involved movies, but it hasn't been done like that yet. So I just really appreciate the movie. Did have a lot of ingenuity. I appreciate it being a story about a person, because it didn't have to be. I mean, Predator 1 and 2 are straightforward action movies, and you are getting a lot of visual emotion and the journey of a character just trying to figure out who their enemy is. And that's what Predator 1 and 2 really give you, is that varying sense of just how does a person deal with a threat. But what I love about Prey, and I love the fact that it's called Prey and not called Predator, is that essentially she is the prey, and that's part of the theme of the movie, is that the part of her challenge in becoming a warrior is being the prey, but mastering the thing that's coming after you. And I love that theme runs throughout the movie and really does build up our main character, and it gives her the opportunity. If it had been called Predator and it wasn't 100% about what is the predator doing and how is it here, and I think that would give it a different feeling of an experience. But because it's called Prey and that's part of the theme of the movie, and it is about her growth as a character, I love that it gives us the leeway to just have this really good story about a person who wants to accomplish something, and seeing how both society views her and how she views herself. And she sees herself as a great warrior, she's just not achieving it, which I think is fantastic. I think it's nice to have a character get good at something in a movie. I think we've gotten a little too Hollywood has gotten a little too crazy with the basically just replacing the male hero with a female hero who's invincible and untouchable. And that's really just, that was never interesting to begin with. I mean, even though Predator does that, the first Predator with Arnold has that, all the macho men who are good at everything, the movie is still about those guys being defeated and how all that macho-ness doesn't amount to anything. So I think it's very important to point out that even the filmmakers who made the best movies back then understood what those tropes actually were, and their approaches to those movies were all about not just subversion, but having something to say in the first place. And that has to be the mindset of the filmmaker who makes these things. You cannot just think, oh, it's an action movie, so my guy is macho and perfect at everything and has no problem taking out the bad guy. I mean, that's not how Face Off was. That is not how Predator 1 or 2 was. Those macho guys and those tough guys lost people and felt horrible at the losses that they faced and had to overcome their personal tragedies in order to keep fighting. And very much in that spirit, Prey continues that. I think that's the best thing about Prey, is that it understands what made the great action movies great, and it delivers some great action. I'm sorry I didn't say this up front, but the action in this movie is totally worth watching. I think Uncharted, the only good action scene is the opening of the movie, and they know that. That's why it's the opening of the movie. You know what I mean? I just really hated that movie. I'm so sorry, Tom Holland and crew. I know you guys worked your asses off on it, but I just hated that movie having so little substance that the best thing it had to offer was in the first 5 minutes. And the great thing about this movie is that it starts off slow, and when it gets to the action, even without the Predator, the action is awesome. The fights are great. And you see how Amber Midthunder is just so crafty, and even though she's small, she's like the bumblebee of this crew, where she's the tiny one, but she's so feral, and she's so vicious, and she's so intense, and you believe in her choreography how she would get out of it. When Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, hops on someone, I'm just like, I believe that this is very cool looking choreography, but I don't believe for real that you can do that. You know what I mean? And what I like about Amber Midthunder against everybody is that I believe she could actually whoop that ass, because it doesn't look like choreography per se. They do a great job of making it look improvised, as if she's figuring it out as she does it, and that she doesn't have slick cool moves. Even in Legion, she had some pretty cool choreography moments and looked cool, but here I thought she earned the coolness. She earned looking like she could handle herself in a fight. And that is what matters in an action movie, is that that is the genre you're in, and the person has to be believable for what they're doing. I believe Tom Holland is Spider-Man, even though the computer animation's taking over most of the battle. But I don't believe him in Uncharted, because he does not match the qualities of that character. Even though as Spider-Man he fought villains much more powerful, he does not have the quality of a guy who could take on the challenges he was facing. And that's not just his acting, that was the casting choice of him with the dialogue that he had. And the fact that the direction did not enhance that. And I mean, no offense to anyone. I'm sure they felt like they were doing a good job at the time. And I know they worked their butts off. But the fact that this movie does everything it can to give you the world, to give you the experience, and to earn the main character's journey, all of that work is what filmmaking is supposed to be about. And it's not about a content war. It's not here just to fill up the screen. The worst thing about sequels and remakes is the studio asking for it. Because the reason sequels and remakes were successful 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago was because the filmmaker came to the studio and said, I want to make this. I have a vision for it, and this is how it should be. Because they could see it. When the studio is asking for it to be exactly like the thing that used to be, I mean, that's homework. That's a request. That's not the filmmaker coming with the vision. You know what I mean? That's why these movies and projects from Disney Plus fail. Because no one came to the studio saying, I have this vision. I mean, maybe they did after the fact, and maybe those words are the key words getting them the jobs. But the fact of the matter is, this is a content war. That's why Disney has to own Marvel and has to own Star Wars, because they know they're in the digital content wars, and that's why all this stuff is being pushed out, and it does not have the care and dedication of at least someone saying, I see how this needs to be. I have a story that will be the length of a movie, or be the length of 3 movies. That has to come first. The Matrix, the original Star Wars trilogy, and the Star Wars prequel trilogy, there was a story before there was a script. And that's the number one important thing about making a movie. That Prey had a story before it had a script. Is that there's something that they wanted to do and say that mattered to the person, that mattered about what, even though it's a sequel, they had a different perspective they wanted to explore. And to me, a Predator movie should be like Prey. It should take place in another time. It should take place, Predator 2 technically takes place in the future of itself. It came out in 1991 or 92, but it took place in 1995. You know what I mean? It set itself in a different time period so it could do what it wanted to do. And that's what matters, is that the film has a vision from the filmmaker, and they know what they're trying to accomplish, and they themselves are the audience member wanting that kind of movie. Sometimes that doesn't work out. Masters of the Universe, unfortunately the fans did not respond to that. I am not a fan of 80s cartoons, so I actually liked season 1 of Masters of the Universe, but I understand why I couldn't get into season 2. But that's fine. It's like, I love season 1. The fact is that they had a vision, and it either works for you or it doesn't, but you can't get the movie made without a vision in the first place. So hats off to Dan Trachtenberg, hats off to the cast and crew, because you guys told the story. And that's what the audience pays for the action and the good filmmaking. What they don't pay for, what comes for free, what is expected. You know what I mean? When this shit is for free on TV, or for free on some screen somewhere that someone can just watch at any time, what they expect for free is the good storytelling, and that their time is not being wasted. So with that being said, on all levels, Prey delivers. Go check it out. I really enjoyed this movie, love this movie, can't wait to watch it again. It's number 2 or 3 on the list of movies I was supposed to watch with my roommates, but then watched with my family instead. And they're like, what the hell? You said don't watch this with my other friends. Oh, no, this one I did say you could watch with your friends. I'm sorry. I will watch it with you. I am a dick. I'm sorry. But anyway, with that being said, I'm a podcaster. What the fuck are you? Shring.